Welcome to the Federal Communications Commission's Back to School webinar. I am your host, Kayla Hernandez Ulloa, Deputy Chief of the Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division, also known as CAOD. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website, www.fcc.gov. This webinar is also going to be listed in a post-eval event with more email information included at a later date. Inquiries for CAOD during this webinar or after the webinar or to join our mailing list can be sent via email to outreach@fcc.gov. Next slide, please. This slide includes our agenda for today. We will have an overview of the FCC initiatives, followed by lightning round presentations by our guest speakers from the U.S. Department of Education and the Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition, or Shelby. We will then go through some consumer and partner outreach resources, which you will hear me mention a lot throughout this presentation. And again, if anyone has any questions during this webinar or after the webinar, please send an email to outreach@fcc.gov. Next slide, please. Our first topic is broadband consumer labels. These are modeled after the U.S. Food and Drug Administration nutrition labels. The broadband consumer labels should make it easier to understand and compare internet service plans. Internet service providers that offer wired or wireless internet service are required to have a label for each standalone broadband service plan that they offer. Consumers should look for broadband labels at point of sale, including sales done online and in stores. On this slide, there's also to the right a blank sample label, which includes information such as the monthly fees, any discounts and bundle services, and also speed that will be provided in the plan. Most providers were required to comply with the label requirements by April 10th of 2024, although providers with 100,000 or fewer subscriber lines have until October 10th, 2024 to comply. And back to the related topic of speeds and of interest is that in March of 2024, the Commission released a news release announcing that it raised the benchmark for high-speed fixed broadband to download speeds of 100 megabits per second and upload speeds of 20 megabits per second. This is a four-fold increase from the 25.3 megabits per second benchmark set by the Commission back in 2015. Next slide, please. Now we'll go to information about the Lifeline program. This week, September 8th through 14th, is Digital Connectivity and Lifeline Awareness Week. In the resources section of this slide presentation, we have added a link to the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners website for more information about the week and a toolkit that can be shared with your community. For those of you that may not be familiar with the Lifeline program, this is a program that helps make telephone and internet service affordable for eligible households. Eligible households can receive a monthly discount of up to $9.25 that can be applied to their monthly telephone or internet service. For consumers living on tribal lands, that enhanced discount is up to $34.25 per month. The Universal Service Administrative Company, which manages the Lifeline program, has a lot of information on its website, lifelinesupport.org. This includes information about managing your benefit once you receive it. It has a link to the online application. And for those consumers that need to find a Lifeline provider, there's information about the company's Near Me tool, where households can look for providers in their area using their city and state or their 5-digit zip code. Next slide, please. We can't talk about Lifeline without a discussion about qualifying for the Lifeline program. There are two ways that consumers can actually qualify for the program. The first is by using their household income if it's at or below 135% of the federal poverty guidelines. Now, if qualifying based on income, you may have to show proof of income like a tax return or 3 consecutive pay stubs when applying for this program. Many consumers have asked us, how do you know if they are at or below 135% of the federal poverty guidelines? On this slide to the right, we do have information that can help consumers. So I will pick an example of a qualifier using income. For a household of one, if the income is up to or below $20,331, that qualifies the household for this program. The second way that a lot of consumers or households qualify for this program is by participating in federal assistance programs. This includes Medicaid, supplemental nutrition assistance programs such as, also known as SNAP, supplemental security income or SSI, federal public housing assistance, and one of the most known is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which many consumers know as Section 8 vouchers. They can also qualify if they're under Section 202 or Section 811, which is the project-based rental assistance. There are also other public housing programs that do qualify the household. And for those on tribal lands, the affordable housing programs for American Indians, Alaska Natives, or Native Hawaiian also qualify for this program. And finally, for households where there are veterans pension and survivor benefits also qualify the household. Please note that if there are multiple members in a household and each one qualifies under a different program, it's still one benefit per household. There's more information about how to qualify for Lifeline on USAC, or the Universal Service Administrative Company's website, lifelinesupport.org. You can also contact the Lifeline Support Center by calling 800-234-93 or sending an email to lifelinesupport@usac.org for more information. Next slide, please. We have a lot of information at the FCC about the E-rate program, but today, millions of students, school staff, and library patrons around the country are on the wrong side of the digital and educational divide, and as a result, they lack access to the same educational resources as their peers. Most of you are familiar with USAC's Schools and Libraries program, commonly known as E-rate, a federal program that provides discounts to assist schools and libraries obtain affordable telecommunications and internet access. The information regarding E-rate support for Wi-Fi hotspots and Wi-Fi on school buses is part of Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel's Learn Without Limits initiative, announced in a June 2023 speech at the American Library Association's annual conference. And just last month, on August 15th, Chairwoman Rosenworcel visited Union Avenue Elementary School to celebrate and promote the FCC's recent vote and adoption of mobile hotspot connectivity for students across the country. Recognition of this historic vote was done in collaboration with Superintendent Alberto Carvalho, and a press release is available with more information on our website, fcc.gov. And just this week, on September 9th, Chairwoman Rosenworcel discussed Learn Without Limits with the Consortium of State School Boards Association in Washington, D.C. The chairwoman's remarks for the 3 speeches mentioned here is available on our website, www.fcc.gov. Regarding Wi-Fi hotspots, the new rules will take the next step towards modernizing the program to ensure students and library patrons have access to the connectivity needed for a 21st century quality education. This latest advancement would permit eligible schools and libraries to request E-rate support for Wi-Fi hotspots and mobile wireless internet services that can be used off premises so that students, school staff, or library patrons with the greatest need can be connected and learn without limits. A note on Wi-Fi on school buses is that they're eligible buses that are school-owned as well as leased or contracted school buses, provided that the school buses are used primarily to transport students to and from school or school-related activities for educational purposes as defined by the Federal Communications Commission's rules. And two dates of importance or more are starting on Tuesday, September 17th, the application window opens for the schools and libraries cybersecurity pilot program. The deadline to apply is Friday, November 1st, 2024. A link to more information in the resources section of this slide presentation is available. And the other, FCC adopts changes to E-rate to support off-premises Wi-Fi hotspots. Another link that we have available in the resources section of this slide. People who want to comment or provide comments to the FCC, please do so, as comments are due by October 4th on 2024. Reply comments are due to the FCC November 4th of 2024. Next slide, please. We are moving on to discuss 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. September is National Prevention Month, and specifically, we recognize that this is Suicide Prevention Week. During this time, we would like to raise awareness about suicide prevention and share messages of hope. The FCC's 988 webpage, which I encourage you to visit, contains a video featuring Chairwoman Rosenworcel. The resources page towards the end of this slide deck contains a link to information from the Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse, and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a national network of more than 200 crisis centers that help thousands of people overcome crisis situations every day. These centers are supported by local and state sources as well as SAMHSA. The 988 Lifeline provides 24/7 confidential support to people in suicidal crisis or mental health-related distress. By calling or texting 988, you'll connect to mental health professionals with the Lifeline network. In our slide presentation, we also can have a map and a URL that shows the over 200 crisis centers across the United States. Next slide, please. 988 is available to anyone across the United States, and it is an inclusive crisis resource. For members of the Veterans and Service Members community, you can press 1 after dialing 988 to connect directly to the Veterans Crisis Lifeline. This lifeline serves our nation's veterans, service members, National Guard, and Reserve members, and those who support them. To text the Veterans Crisis Lifeline, use the short code 838-255. Members of the LGBTQIA+ community can also text PRIDE to 988 or press 3 to reach a specialized LGBTQIA+ affirming counselor. To chat with the counselor, they can also visit www.988lifeline.org. There are also services available in Spanish for anyone who wants to reach a Spanish-speaking crisis counselor. Dialing 988 and then pressing 2 will connect you to a Spanish-speaking crisis counselor, but you can also send a text to reach a counselor with the word ayuda to 988. And for persons using American Sign Language, they can use their video phones directly to contact 988. Next slide, please. Another topic that is very important is tips for stopping or reducing text. Unwanted calls and texts are a constant and top resource of consumer complaints. This also remains the FCC's top consumer protection priority. Unwanted calls and texts, including illegal and spoofed robocalls, are our top consumer protection priority, and these include complaints from consumers whose numbers are being spoofed or whose calls are being mistakenly blocked or labeled as a possible scam call by a robocall blocking app or service. The FCC is committed to doing what we can to protect you from these unwelcome situations and is cracking down on illegal calls in a variety of ways. On this slide, we have some tips that are just a highlight of a more extensive list that is available for consumers, and I will mention some of these at this time. Do not give out personal information such as account numbers, social security number, mother's maiden names, password, or other identifying information in response to unexpected calls or if you are at all suspicious. If you answer the phone and the caller or a recording asks you to hit a button to stop getting the calls, you should just hang up. Scammers often use this trick to identify potential targets. And lastly, on this slide, don't respond to any questions using the word yes. This could be another way that scammers often use to trick the identity of potential targets. So please be aware that this is some tips that we would like you to share within all your community. Next slide, please. We have a lot of information on this topic, but we do have some warnings. You may not be able to tell right away if an incoming call is spoofed. Even if you have caller ID that shows a number that could be perhaps a local number, that does not necessarily mean that it is actually a local call. This is yet another trick that scammers use and aim that at consumers. And also, if you get an inquiry from someone who says they represent a company or a government agency, hang up and call the phone number on your account statement or in a phone book or on the company or government agency's website to verify the authenticity of this request. Please remember that most times you will usually get a written statement in the mail before you get a phone call from a legitimate source, particularly if the caller is asking for payment. We also want to advise consumers to register on the Federal Trade Commission's Do Not Call registry to possibly reduce or stop the number of unwanted calls and texts that they receive. Next slide, please. We also have a lot of tips for protecting children from objectionable content. Now, this is a topic that a lot of consumers should be aware of, especially nowadays when a lot of children have access to mobile devices. So again, on the screen, you will see, and we have listed some of the tips. And again, the FCC has a lot more tips available on this subject, but I will just pick a few. Talk to children about how they use wireless devices. Ask them what they are sending and receiving or downloading and from where. If children access websites from wireless devices, know what sites they're accessing and what's associated with them, particularly within social networking, chat sites, and apps. And for anyone who is taking care of children or is a guardian, ask wireless service providers about filtering software or other parental controls that can be installed on wireless devices. Next slide, please. For this portion of the webinar, we have two guest speakers. Our first speaker is Isabella Zachariah, Policy Fellow, Office of Educational Technology for the U.S. Department of Education. In her current role, she focuses on digital equity and artificial intelligence initiatives in OET. Welcome to Isabella.
Thank you, Kayla. Good afternoon, everyone. As Kayla mentioned, I'm in OET and in the Office of Educational Technology. Sorry, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. In the Office of Educational Technology, we set a vision and a plan for national education technology policy and how technology can be used in classrooms for early learners through adult education. Next slide. So the National Education Technology Plan, or NETP, is our flagship document for setting a vision for how technology can be used in education. And so the 2024 NETP was released in January of this year. Next slide. The 2024 NETP focuses on bridging 3 digital divides. The first is the digital use divide, which addresses the disparity in how students are engaged with technology in their learning. While some students are able to use technology actively to build and produce things, other students are limited to more passive uses of technology in the classroom. The digital design divide recognizes the importance of professional development and the unequal access that educators have to training on how to integrate technology effectively in the classroom. And lastly, the digital access divide focuses on the unequal access to foundational aspects of educational technology, such as connectivity to internet, devices, and digital content. And this divide also emphasizes the importance of digital health, safety, and citizenship skills. Next slide, please. Thank you. The National Education Technology Plan also includes recommendations for key groups of leaders, such as district or state leaders. A few highlights are for the digital use divide, implementing feedback mechanisms that empower students to become co-designers of learning experiences. For the design divide, designing and sustaining systems that support ongoing learning for new and veteran teachers to provide them with time and space needed to design learning opportunities with technology. And in the access divide, continued focus on equitable access to connectivity, devices, and content, as well as building baseline expectations for accessibility features. Next slide, please. So a few additional resources I'd like to highlight. The first is our Dear Colleague letter from 2023 that provides information to state, district, and eligible partnership grantees on core areas for maximizing investment in innovative technology-based learning strategies through existing funding. Especially as other funding is starting to sunset, this is a helpful resource that gives an overview of federal funds to support digital learning. So if you click on the tab stories on our OET webpage, you can see it in this picture in the orange circle. You'll find stories of how school districts, institutions of higher education, and community-based organizations are working towards digital equity and inclusion in each state and territory across the U.S. This is a great resource of examples of partners who are already doing impactful work in digital equity and have promising practices. Next to our stories tab on our website, you'll see our blogs tab. We post blogs on key topics such as AI literacy, what is AI, adult education and digital skills, and we will also be posting a back to school blog with resources at the end of this month. I also want to share that the Federal Kids Online Health and Safety Task Force recently released a new report with recommendations and best practices for safer social media and online platform use for youth. The report provides a summary of the risks and benefits of social media on the health and safety and privacy of young people, as well as best practices for parents and caregivers. And lastly, another part of our work has been supporting states, schools, and other community institutions as they go through NTIA's digital equity grant processes. NTIA recently released the notice of funding for the Digital Equity Competitive Grant, and applications are due September 23rd. So schools, institutions of higher education, and other community anchor institutions are eligible to apply. And finally, if you want to stay updated with our work at OET, please send me an email letting me know you'd like to sign up for our newsletter. We will be releasing additional AI guidance and guidance on student personal device policies in the coming weeks. So besides our website, that is the best place to stay informed. Thank you, and I will pass it back to Kayla.
Thank you, Isabella. And speaker will be John Winhausen, Executive Director, Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition, also known as Shelby. As Executive Director, he spearheads Shelby's membership growth and shapes its broadband policy recommendations. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Kayla. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and everyone on this webinar. As you mentioned, I head up the SHLB Coalition. We are not part of the government. We are an independent public interest group, nonprofit, but we very much support many of the actions the FCC has taken over the last year or so to address the digital divide. And our mission is to promote broadband to and through the anchor institutions as a way to make broadband more affordable for the average consumer. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. If we could move to the next slide, and to the next slide after that. So Kayla mentioned already the three programs that are very significant that the FCC has adopted in the last year. I would just like to touch on those three programs a bit more to provide some information for you. But these are three wonderful opportunities for schools and libraries, and they can apply for funding for each of these three programs. So this is a very significant change, and we really applaud the FCC, in particular for Chairwoman Rosenworcel, for moving these three issues forward. Basically, we have a longstanding digital divide. And despite working on this issue for about 20 years, we still have not solved the problem, which is that broadband does not exist in a lot of places. And even where it does exist, it's too expensive for average consumers and a lot of low-income consumers in particular. So we encourage people to take advantage of these three opportunities for additional funding. If we could move to the next slide. So we'll start with the school bus Wi-Fi decision that Kayla mentioned. The FCC adopted this order last year in 2023. This is analogous to the fact that the E-rate program has for many years supported wireless technology for library bookmobiles. And that's a good precedent. Now the FCC has extended that concept to include school buses and has been willing to provide support, economic support for school districts to purchase and deploy Wi-Fi capability on the school bus. And this is very important because so many students have very long bus rides to and from school in the morning and the afternoon. It's often talked about in rural areas where these bus rides are very long, but this also can take place in urban areas as well. So it's much better for the students to have access to the internet during the school bus ride so they can make productive use of their time. And so the slide here shows some of the services and technologies that school districts can apply for financial support in order to make this technology more widely available. And we support this approach. Now, this is a part of the E-rate program. So school districts will have to use the existing E-rate discount matrix to determine how much of the costs can be covered by the FCC's Universal Service Fund, but it can go up to as high as 90% of the costs can be covered by the FCC. So school districts would still have to pay the remaining 10%, but it makes it much more feasible for school districts to pursue this route, and we encourage them to do so. Next slide, please. So the second initiative that I'd like to speak to is the E-rate hotspot lending opportunity. The FCC just adopted this order a few months ago, and it's something that really results from the experience that the FCC had with the COVID-generated program called the Emergency Connectivity Fund. 3 years ago, Congress, during the midst of the COVID pandemic, adopted the Emergency Connectivity Fund and appropriated $7 billion to the FCC to make available to schools and libraries to support hotspot lending programs. So that was a very successful program. Something like 8 million households were able to benefit from these hotspot lending programs through the E-rate program. And unfortunately, now that $7 billion has run out. So the FCC, to its credit, has found a way to incorporate that same concept of hotspot lending into the E-rate program going forward. So this will be a continuing revenue opportunity. The FCC has folded it into the long-term Universal Service Fund. So this is a very exciting development. We're very pleased to see this. The SHLB Coalition had petitioned the FCC to do this very thing 3 years ago, and then Congress stepped up to take the reins and provided that funding. And now the FCC is taking it up and making it a permanent part of the entire service. So the funding will begin next year. Applications will be due with the general E-rate funding cycle. The applications will be due early next year. Usually it's between January and March. And applicants must go through a competitive bidding process to determine the best provider of this Wi-Fi on school buses. So we're very excited about this, but it will take some work. And a lot of schools and libraries should begin to pursue this opportunity this fall to run through their competitive bidding process to identify their needs and then identify the company or companies that are going to provide that service to them. And then they'll be able to submit their applications early next year. So we're very excited about this. The next slide, please. And as Kayla mentioned, this will allow schools and libraries to purchase internet hotspots to lend to students and library patrons off campus. So this is a very important concept. So we're getting beyond the walls of the school and library buildings to allow students at home to be able to benefit from wireless internet access through their school and library supporter. The program allows for the FCC to provide funding for up to $15 per month per hotspot, and also not up to $90 per month for each hotspot device. So this may not cover the entire cost of those hotspot services and devices, but it is still quite a substantial amount of funding the FCC is making available. The applicant does have to comply with SIPA, the Children's Internet Protection Act. And so those filtering requirements are required. But I will say that schools and libraries that have done this in the past have already been implementing a lot of these SIPA rules. So this should not be a heavy burden on most school districts that choose to do so. The FCC has also said they will provide funding over a 3-year budget and based on an FCC formula. I will not get into the details of how to structure that formula now because it is a little bit complicated, but you can figure it out. It's based on the school discount matrix for identifying the percentage of students in the school, in the free and reduced school lunch program or the square footage of the library. And just a note about the implementation, schools and libraries must retain their information about the use of this program for 10 years. So it is a significant amount of paperwork that's involved, but it is eminently doable, and we encourage schools and libraries to pursue this very exciting initiative. Next slide, please. Here are a few resources that you can turn to for added training. There'll be more resources available later in these slides. Next slide, please. So the third Learn Without Limits program that the FCC has launched is around cybersecurity. Earlier this year, the FCC adopted a cybersecurity pilot program. Now, technically, this is not within the E-rate program, but it is under the umbrella of the larger Universal Service Fund. The Shelby Coalition has for a long time suggested to the FCC that cybersecurity protections really should be included in E-rate in the long run. And the FCC may get there, but it decided first to run a pilot program with a funding cap of $200 million, just to see how the program could work, and then to lay the groundwork for what we hope is a decision down the road to provide cybersecurity funding on an ongoing basis. But this need for this program is very strong. We hear every month there's a new school or library system that is the victim of a cyber attack. In fact, we often hear that schools and libraries are information rich, but cyber poor. They don't have the resources to spend on cybersecurity to protect the integrity of their networks. So we're very pleased that the FCC has taken this step to move this policy forward. The filing window is different from the E-rate filing window. So the FCC just announced the filing window will open on September 17th and run until November 1st. And the purpose, as you can see on the slide, is to protect the security and protection of E-rate funded networks and to measure the cybersecurity costs. Now, I will also say that this program is vitally important, and we encourage schools and libraries of all kinds and all sizes and all different geographies to consider applying for this program. The FCC has specifically said that it wants to identify a diverse range of schools and libraries. So you could be in a rural area, urban area, big or small, tribal, or other kinds of communities. It is intentionally going to choose a diverse set of applicants so it can gain the most information out of this pilot program. Next slide, please. Here are a couple of resources that you can turn to both within USAC and the FCC for more information about this cybersecurity pilot program. Next slide, please. Just a word about our Shelby Coalition AnchorNets conference. That conference is coming up in just 3 weeks on October 2nd through the 4th at the Crystal Gateway Marriott in Crystal City, Virginia, very close to Reagan National Airport. And the reason I mention it is that we are having 2 pre-conference workshops on October 2nd, one on cybersecurity and the other on hotspot lending. So if you're looking for more information about how to apply for these funding programs, you may want to consider signing up to attend these 2 workshops. We are holding them in person, but also online. So you can join online with a small fee, and this is going to provide greater information so you can really dig into the details of how to fill out the applications to improve your chances for getting the funding through the FCC. Next slide, please. Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to participate, and I'll turn things back to Kayla.
Thank you, John, for that information. Before we go into just an overview of our resources, I'd like to ask if my colleagues, if any questions have been submitted to outreach@fcc.gov.
No, not at this time.
Great, thank you so much. Well, here we are with our consumer and outreach partner resources, and we hope that these are useful information for you. I will go quickly through these, but wanted to note broadband labels, Lifeline program, the E-rate program, 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline are things we discussed earlier here today. The FCC has its Consumer Help Center, where you can see more information and download materials about not only the topics we discussed today, but a lot of other consumer-facing topics that the FCC addresses. Our website is www.fcc.gov/consumers. We also have our Consumer Inquiries and Complaints Center available to consumers. There's an online portion of it at consumercomplaints.fcc.gov, where you can look for information about a lot of telecommunication topics, and we use that information to see if you need to file a complaint or you need to call another part of the agency to help find an answer to your inquiry. And on this page, the final point, please send an email to outreach@fcc.gov, not only with questions during this webinar or after the webinar, but for any consumer-facing issue that you may need more information from. This address can also be used to request mailings of hard copy materials if you have a presentation and would like an FCC speaker, or if you would like to schedule a meeting with your community members to discuss in more depth a particular consumer-facing topic. Next slide, please. Information about stopping unwanted robocalls and texts, protecting children from objectionable content on wireless devices, the Children's Internet Protection Act, or CIPA, and are all available on our website. We have the URLs here and also QR codes for people to find information. Included here and mentioned before, we also have a link to the Federal Trade Commission's National Do Not Call Registry and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, for more information. Next slide, please. And continuing with our consumer and outreach partner resources, we have also included here a link to both of our speakers' website, the U.S. Department of Education and the Schools Health and Libraries Broadband Coalition for more information. Mentioned before and included here is a link to the Schools and Libraries Cybersecurity Pilot Program, where you can find more information, including a guide for how to apply. We mentioned also NARUC, or the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. So here is their website, and we also have a QR code for them. And finally, as I mentioned before, the comment period for the FCC adopts changes to E-rate to support off-premises Wi-Fi and hotspots the comments are due by October 4th. And you will also find more information on how to submit comments and reply comments. But even for that, if any of you or anyone in your community needs information about how to file comments, which are available to the general public, please contact outreach@fcc.gov for more information. Next slide, please. We'd like to thank you for being here today and joining us during today's webinar. A special thank you to our guest speakers, Isabella Zachariah from the U.S. Department of Education and John Winhausen from Shelby. I'd like to again emphasize, for any information that you may need, please email outreach@fcc.gov, and this includes questions, requests for materials, or to schedule a meeting with the Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division. We look forward to having you join us at future Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division events, and again, thank you for your participation here today. This concludes our webinar.